So in this first lesson, I want to talk a little bit about your Ayurvedic constitution, what we call also Prakruti. And maybe I should start by saying that Ayurveda is one of the oldest traditional healing systems in the world. So it is said to be more than 5,000 years old, and it originated in the Vedic culture of India a long, long time ago. And classically, actually, we don't know this anymore, but classically, actually, Ayurveda, yoga, Jyotish, which is Vedic astrology, and Vastu, which is kind of the Indian feng shui, they were all practiced as sister sciences together. And when we look at the word Ayurveda, it's actually composed of two Sanskrit root syllables, Ayu and Veda. So Ayu means life and Veda means science. So Ayurveda is actually much more than just a medical system. It's also called the science of life. It's the science of how we can live in harmony both within our own mind, body, spirit complex and also in relation to the environment. So Ayurveda, actually, I sometimes refer to it as a relational medicine, a way of living that looks at how we are deeply interconnected with the nature around us. And so health in Ayurveda is, again, this dynamic balance between our own internal geography and the geography of the earth. When we look at the environment outside, we see, according to Ayurveda, that everything we find in the universe is made up of 5 elements, the 5 great elements, which is space, air, fire, water, and earth. So everything is made up of these 5 elements, and also every process in nature is dominated by 3 main forces. We sometimes call them also Mahagunas. And those forces are the force of movement, kinetic energy, the force of transformation, which is metabolic energy, and the force of structure and stability, which in physics is potential energy. So these 3 cosmological principles of movement, transformation, and structure in the body, we call them Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. So Vata, which is a combination of the space and the air element, governs all movement and communication in the body. So it's mostly your nervous system and kind of what's coming in and what's moving out of the body. Yeah? Pitta is fire and water as a combination, and it governs all digestive and metabolic processes, including your hormonal system. And then Kapha, which is the heaviest of the doshas, which is earth and water, has this function of giving bulk and structure and stability to the body. Yeah? Without Kapha, we wouldn't have a physical body. So it's immunity, it's stability. So these 3 doshas, actually all of us have all 3 doshas, right? None of us doesn't have a nervous system or a hormonal system or muscles and bones, right? So we all have these 3 doshas in us, but the ratio in which we have those doshas, that varies from person to person. And this is what we call your Prakruti, or your unique constitution, if you will, your factory setting, what you came into this life with. Yeah. So your doshic combination, your constitution, is actually not even determined at birth. It's determined when your parents conceived you. So depending on the season, the foods your parents ate that day, the weather, all sorts of emotional configurations, all of those influences at the moment of conception determine your unique constitution. And there are classically 7 constitutions that we speak about. Somebody can be a pure Vata, a pure Pitta, or a pure Kapha constitution. Or there can be 3 dual doshic types like Vata Pitta, Pitta Kapha, or Vata Kapha. Or there can be a tridoshic constitution, somebody that has all 3 doshas in equal amounts. And I want to spend a little bit of time now just giving you a very brief overview on what those constitutional types may look like. So the first one, Vata, I said earlier, it's composed of air and space. It's like the wind. So it's the lightest, it's the most subtle of the constitution. So Vata people usually are fairly petite. They have narrow body frames, light bones. Because of the dryness and the lightness of wind, they have usually dry skin, dry hair. They easily get cold. They change constantly. So the nature of wind is movement and change. So Vata people tend to be hyperactive. They tend to move quickly. They tend to speak quickly. They tend to learn quickly, but also forget very quickly, right? Vata people can get things really easily. The next morning you ask them what movie they watched last night, they will have already forgotten what they watched the night before, right? In terms of their digestive system, they are very delicate, so and also constantly changing, right? It's the nature of wind. So one day they're super hungry, the next day they're not hungry at all. Usually they have constipation, or there might be gas, bloating, cramping, lightheadedness, dizziness, overexertion. So these are all kind of tendencies of imbalance that we can see in Vata. Psychologically, I think the biggest virtue of Vata is actually adaptability and flexibility. So Vata people are super good at adapting to plan changes. Like you've made a plan for something, last minute it changes. Vata people are like, okay, yeah, fine, we can do that. So it's this ability to flow with whatever occurs. That's one of the virtues of Vata. So they are flexible, enthusiastic, often very witty, humorous, talkative, great social connectors. So people with, I don't know, like 10,000 Instagram followers would usually be Vata people. They're kind of social butterflies. Out of balance, however, they can easily become hyperactive, scattered, and they tend towards ungroundedness, anxiety, worry, spaciness, inability to focus, forgetfulness, nervousness, tension. Because of this, what I just gave you this very, very brief intro, because of this changeability, with Vata things constantly change. Like Vata people, for example, they start learning a new language, Spanish. So there for a month, they're totally into Spanish. And then tango comes along and they start picking up tango and Spanish goes to the background. And then they pick up kite surfing. Like it's constantly this change that's happening. Because of that, Vata people, even though they hate it, they do very well with routine. So getting up at the same time every day, or eating their meals at regular times, or having a morning routine, like after they get up to do some movement and then to sit down in meditation. Warmth and grounding and regularity is also super important, because Vata, like the wind, is cold. The nature of Vata is cold and dry. So grounding, warmth, slowness, all of those are things that help calm that fragile, overactive, hyper state that Vata usually is in. So that's Vata. Pitta is a different story. So Pitta is a combination, we said, of fire and water. Yeah? And Pitta people, when we look at them physically, they're usually medium built, so good muscular development, good bones, good bone structure. Their skin usually is very light and gets red easily. So when Pitta people start working out, or when they're in the sun, they kind of turn into these like little red lobsters. Their eyes usually are quite intense. Pitta people are super intelligent. They're very focused. They're what we would call maybe those type A kind of personalities. Really good leaders, really organized, kind of go-getters. They can be competitive. We said with Vata that the virtue of Vata was what? Like flexibility, adaptability, right? For Pitta, it's actually courage. Yeah. It's being in a leadership position, being able to speak up, being able to stand up for yourself, for others. That's kind of the virtue of a Pitta person. If a Pitta person is out of balance, they're not really pleasant to be around, that I can say. So, for example, they become very jealous, very controlling, very competitive, very arrogant, angry, hateful sometimes even, impatient, bossy. Yeah? So all of these things can come up when Pitta is a little bit out of whack. But as I said, in balance, they make amazing leaders. Like Vata people, for example, are really good artists. They usually are creatives. So they're journalists, they're writers, they're artists, they're painters. Pitta people are either teachers, or they're politicians, or they're CEOs, because Pitta people love bossing people around. They love giving orders, and they're good at it. They're good at building things. They're innovators, right? They're great natural leaders. The metabolism of a Pitta person usually is very high, very strong, so they have a great appetite. If Pitta people are hungry, you don't want to be around a Pitta person. They get super angry, irritable, and not pleasant. So you want to make sure, if you're traveling with a Pitta person, that person is fed well at the proper times. Otherwise, it's really a nightmare to be around a Pitta person. They have a strong metabolism, strong appetite, strong thirst. They're passionate people. They love knowledge. So Pitta people will collect books. Vata people tend to spend money left and right, and they don't remember what they spent money on. If there's money's there, they spend it, right? Pitta people love spending money on luxury, for example, like a special treat. And Kapha people, I will come to Kapha now. Kapha people are a little bit more, they're the ones that actually save money. So, since Pitta people are quite intense, their mantra, so if the mantra for Vata would be to ground and to be regular and stable, to calm, for Pitta it would be to soften and to surrender. Yeah? Surrendering for Pitta is one of the hardest things to do, and it's one of the things that they would do well with in terms of being an optimally healthy and pleasant to be around Pitta person. So softening, letting go of control, easing on intensity would be a good thing for Pitta. So that's Pitta. Then the last one of the doshas is kapha dosha. So kapha dosha, as I said before, is made up of the earth and water elements. It's the heaviest of the three doshas. So it stands for stability and structure. So when you look at a kapha person, kapha people will usually be larger built, like wider hips, bigger shoulders, tendency towards slow metabolism, so maybe some excess weight that they may carry around. Usually they have beautiful eyes, thick hair, strong bones, but a tendency towards sluggishness and congestion. And if we were to say one word as a virtue for a kapha person, it would be love, actually. Love and patience. So kapha people tend to be very compassionate. They tend to be very giving, very nurturing, very sweet and easygoing, very calm. So they're really pleasant people to be around. If we compare kapha constitutions to pitta and vata, they are slow in everything they do. They move slow, they learn slow. But a kapha person, for example, they will learn something slow, but they will never forget. It's almost like, you know, like the memory of an elephant. Like a vata person, if you've done something to a vata person, by tomorrow they will have forgotten it. A kapha person will remind you 25 years into your friendship that 25 years ago you said this and this and this and this to them. So they have this ability to retain everything. Because it's the elements of kapha, earth and water, they're sticky. So things stick. So kapha people, for example, are fantastic collectors. Like if you meet an art collector, a stamp collector, like they're usually kapha people because they love collecting things. They have a hard time letting go of things. So attachment, possessiveness, clinginess, stubbornness, stuckness, those are all things that kapha people have kind of a challenge. So kapha constitutions, they do best with movement and activity and stimulation. If a kapha people sleeps too much, if a kapha person stays on the sofa too much, they will actually become heavier and more lethargic. But if a kapha person moves, then their energy will increase. Yeah? So, like I said, there are this spectrum of 7 different constitutions. The 3 monotypes, the 3 dual types, and then the tridoshic. I would say most people actually are dual constitutions. So they're a combination of 1 or 2 of the doshas. And the idea in Ayurveda is that once you know your constitution, you know your strengths and also your weaknesses. And you know what things in terms of lifestyle, what things in terms of food either balance you or throw you off balance. So I always say this, Ayurveda is not, or Ayurvedic doshas or constitutions, it's not a box, right? It's not like you're a vata, you're this and this and this. It's much more a map. I always like to liken it to a map. It's a map to help you understand yourself, your internal geography better, and to make wiser choices in everything you do to bring more balance to your system. So if you want to know what you are, you can actually go to my website. There's a free dosha test that you can make that gives you a pretty good first idea on what you might be. But actually the most true way to learn your constitution is if you work with a practitioner, and that practitioner would take your pulse. So when we take your pulse, at the deepest level of the pulse, we read the constitution, we read the blueprint that you came into this life. And then when we read the pulse at the most superficial level, we read what's going on right now. And health actually in Ayurveda means if what's going on right now is the same as what your original constitution was. This is what health is. So health doesn't mean Vata, Pitta, Kapha needs to be at the same level, right? It needs to be for you what you came into this life with. If you came into this life Vata 3, Pitta 2, Kapha 1, then Vata 3, Pitta 2, Kapha 1 is your health system. So once you know your constitution and your strengths and weaknesses, then you can make wise and skillful choices in terms of the food you're eating or in terms of your lifestyle to help you bring more balance to your system. So in the next lesson, we will actually look at the Ayurvedic nutritional model for each particular constitutional type.